Hey everybody, how's it going? Seth Williams here, and you are listening to the REtipster podcast. So, today I've got a guest on the show who I've followed and looked up to for quite a while. His name is Jeff Rose, and he runs a website called Good Financial Sense, and that's sense with a C. Now, if you're strictly a real estate investor, you may not be familiar with Jeff or his site, but I can assure you that he's a pretty big deal in the world of personal finance bloggers. He's been around for a long time. A lot of people know him. And Jeff is a specialist in wealth hacks, income accelerators. He's got a lot of great ideas for just personal investing in general. So I wanted to invite Jeff on and just see what would come out of this conversation that we're about to have. So, Jeff, welcome to the show.
Best.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So aside from what I just said, what do you do? Like, what is your history? What's your story? How did you fall into your current career path?
What do I do? I successfully get 4 kids to school each and every day, 15, 12, 11, and 7-year-old.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
But that is a big deal. It takes up a lot of time, but it's I'm grateful for it each and every day, even when my daughter struggles with picking out the shoes that match her outfit that we experienced this morning. But prior to, I really appreciate the introduction, man.
Yeah.
It's been a blessing to be where I'm at today. The fact that right now I work from home, I'm currently recording from my YouTube podcast studio, which is the second floor of our pool house. And sometimes I just have to say that out loud because it's like, wow, like that's pretty sweet, because I don't know if I ever would have thought that I would say that type of statement 3 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, 5 years ago, or 10, especially 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I graduated college after struggling with debt. I took out student loan debt, even though I didn't need to, because I joined the Army National Guard. I was a college dropout, going nowhere, got mixed up in drugs, really was working in a cubicle doing data entry for my mom's company, not the company that she owned. She just was in she was in accounts receivable for a stuffed animal company. They no longer exist. It was called Applause. They made like Winnie the Pooh. And when I dropped out of college, I needed a job. So I was sitting in a cubicle doing data entry, working a 10 key like it was nobody's business. And I was hating life. And luckily joined the military, ended up getting to school, ended up majoring in finance, got an internship at a local investment firm. I used to live in Southern Illinois, and that led a journey of me becoming a financial advisor, which I remember clearly stating to several clients that I will be doing this the rest of my life. 3 years ago, I sold that business. So not so much my entire life, I think it was almost 16 years that I was a financial planner, had my own wealth management firm that I sold. And the reason I sold was not because I had a midlife crisis, which I'm 44 now, so that's probably coming. I'm sure there's a Corvette or some sort of like sports car in the horizon. Actually, no, it's been Jordans. I wear a lot of Jordan sneakers. That's my midlife crisis. But somewhere in the middle of me being a financial planner, I started a financial blog. And this was back in 2008 when I didn't know anything about social media, did not have Facebook, was not on MySpace, none of this stuff. But I had just co-founded an investment firm with 3 other guys. I was what we call in the independent space. So we had a little bit more freedom to market ourselves differently than the traditional like Merrill Lynch's and Edward Jones and those type of advisors. So trying to think outside the box, I was just reading a bunch of magazines like Financial Planning Magazine and Financial Advisor Magazine, and read this article. It talked about how if you really want to stand out from the competition, you need to start a blog. And I remember I read this 1-page article and I'm like, yes, that's what I'm going to do. What's a blog? Because I had no idea really what it was at that time. And when I went to Google, So I was a certified financial planner, which is a designation that you don't have to get as a financial advisor. Kind of like an accountant, doesn't have to become a CPA, but it was something that I felt like that I needed to stand out because I was young, still kind of young, I guess, but definitely younger back then, and trying to help stand out. To show clients and potential clients like, hey, I'm serious about what I do. I'm committed to the financial planning process because I've got the alphabet soup behind me. So anyway, had those credentials. So I went to Google after reading this article about blogging. I typed in certified financial planner blogs. And when I typed that into Google back in 2008, what came up was like 2 or 3 blogs in the entire country.
Wow, that's crazy.
That
it's a different time, huh?
Totally different time.
Yeah.
Like if you type that in now, you're going to have a lot more results than back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember the 2 or 3 I went to. I'm like, oh, like they look okay. Like it didn't look great. Like I don't know what I was envisioning, but it looked like that 55-year-old guy who figured out how to start a website
Mm-hmm.
to sell dry cleaning or something. But it was one of those times, like, prior to that, I'd always heard that expression, oh, you need to find your niche. You need to find your niche. I'm like, I don't even know. Is it niche? Is it niche? Like, how do you pronounce it? How do you know what it is?
I still don't know how.
But when that's just my best guess. But I just remember getting so excited when I felt like, oh my gosh, I think I just found something. Like, I think I just uncovered something. And it was like in that moment that I made this silent declaration that I'm going to have the best financial planner blog that exists. I don't even know what that really means, but I'm going to figure it out. And that's what I did. Like I started learning SEO. I learned how to write blog posts. I should also mention for anybody that's like, oh, I'm thinking about doing a blog, but I suck at writing. My senior year English teacher told me, and I'm sure I kind of twisted her words, but I remember her clearly saying something to the effect that, Jeff, you try really, really hard at writing, but you're just not that good.
Oh, wow. Man.
And she was really nice, Yeah. And the thing though, when I heard that from her, I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, I totally agree with her because it just wasn't, like, I was decent at math, but like writing wasn't my thing. But after reading blog posts and checking out other personal finance blogs, just learning how to write, learning about SEO, social media marketing, and all this was geared towards trying to build my financial planning practice by using online marketing to drive in new leads. Because I was tired of doing seminars. I definitely was not doing cold calling anymore, which I did like in my first couple of years. And all of a sudden I started having success with what I was doing.
Yeah. So being a certified financial planner, so what exactly did that entail? Like, were you like daily managing people's funds for them, like trading stocks in and out? Or is it more just like, I think you should put your money in this fund, do that? Like, how involved was that?
So like, I think every planner does it differently. And there was definitely this time where I had a lot of ignorant confidence in that I could build custom portfolios for my clients. And I mean, I think that was true if I was managing, say, like a dozen clients. But when I had 100, 150 different households that I'm managing, trying to build custom portfolios for each and every single one of them, I just got to the point where I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So you can hire outside money managers. The brokerage firm that we'd partnered with, they had like their own custom portfolios we could use. We could outsource to third party asset managers. And so basically my role was sitting down with the client, taking a look at where they were in that moment. Are they in their 50s? Are they in their 60s? How much do they have saved? And then help them identify what are they trying to accomplish? What are their goals? And most of them, like, they didn't really know how to even articulate what their goals were. It was, oh, I want to retire.
Mm-hmm.
Great. When do you want to retire?
Mm-hmm.
How much do you need to live off of when you retire? How much do you have saved? What are you comfortable with? Do you have any plans after retirement? So basically, like, just having to extract a lot of information that sometimes, like, they hadn't even taken the time to think about. So it was a lot of relationship building, a lot of, mentorship, coaching, consulting. And that's the part that actually was a lot of fun. The part that probably one of the main reasons why I ended up getting out of the business was I just got really tired of right now I'm assuming the market's up or down today, or I mean, I know we're been trending down. I think we hit like a bear market at one time. So it's times like this where I'm like, praise God that I am no longer having to field all the questions of why their portfolios are down 2%.
Yeah.
That was like the broken record conversations that I just got tired of having.
Yeah.
But as far as like meeting with people and having conversations and learning their money story and helping them articulate their goals and achieve their goals, like that was the part that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that would drive me nuts too, having to answer questions on things I really can't control and aren't my fault. But like I said, I sort of get the concern, but still it's like, what do you want me to do? You know, that would drive me nuts. In terms of starting the blog, like how critical was it that you be a certified financial planner in order to do the blog and YouTube channel stuff that you're doing now? Like, was it kind of crucial, or are they kind of disconnected?
Looking back, like I didn't think of it as a big deal in the online space. Whenever I got my CFP designation, like I did that more for validity, of like, hey, I am serious about the financial planning process. What ended up being a fun byproduct of that was when I started connecting with other personal finance bloggers. And when I say personal finance bloggers, like these typically were people that were still working a 9-to-5 job. They just had a passion for investing or budgeting or personal finance in general. And then they just started sharing their journey, of where they were, maybe like had a bunch of debt. This is what they learned about investing. Here's some investing strategies that they've been testing out. So really just like sharing their journey. So when I entered these chat rooms and started connecting with many of them, they were like, oh, you're a CFP. Like you're legit. It's like, okay, sure. So it definitely gave me like this like VIP pass, of like, oh yeah, you've got like the legit check mark. You've been verified. What also helped was getting quoted in the media. Like it just seemed like it was a lower obstacle or a lower barrier just because I had those credentials. Like that helped, connecting with journalists, getting guest posts on different sites, writing for bigger sites, having that CFP designation definitely helped, which I never even would have thought until, when I started to network and connect with other people.
I feel like you've gotten quoted in the media a lot. Like you've been on, have you been on national news shows before or something? I feel like I've seen you on some kind of thing on YouTube where you were like a guest speaker and sitting around with 4 other people. And I've seen you write for huge websites. Like, how do you get so well connected like that? Do they just find you, or are you like reaching out to them?
That was a lot of networking, a lot of building connections with other personal finance bloggers, journalists. And initially, gosh, I'm trying to remember, like, because I remember like getting on Forbes, like being able to write for Forbes, like that was a big deal. And I struck out twice, and I had there was 2 people that I connected with, and one of them was people may know him, they may not know him. Like his name is Noah Kagan. He is the CEO of AppSumo, or I guess now Sumo.com. He was Facebook employee like number 20 or 30 something, and like he even introduced me to his Forbes editor and ghosted, didn't get a response. I had somebody else who also was already a contributor for Forbes, like, try to connect me to their editor, ghosted. So it was like my 3rd attempt at somebody else that was also writing for Forbes. And she even helped me almost like draft like my resume of like, because it's like, what ideas are you going to bring, but also like how many eyeballs can you bring to their platform? So finally, like the third attempt, I got accepted, years ago. That was years ago now. But before all that, like I remember I started writing for it. I can't remember the site now. It was not Experian, but it was like some, I think it might be like a tax blog. And they were paying me like $50 to write a 500-word article. But it was like a Fortune, 500, maybe like a Fortune 1000 company. Like it was a recognizable name. And that was just one of those stepping stones of, I will do it just so I can get my byline. And there were other platforms. Sometimes they wouldn't even pay you, like Huffington Post, when they used to allow you to write for them. Like they didn't pay you. Like you'd have to write a 5,000-word article. So which for me, that's like a half a day's work, if not longer. Yeah. And so, but you would do this just as a way to say, hey, I was published on such and such platform. And it was doing those little things along the way to build, kind of build up your resume to all of a sudden now you get into Forbes, and then you get into Business Insider. And then somehow I got nominated to be on like the CNBC Financial Advisor Digital Council, which is something that like, once you've done it, like you can't take it away. So like any opportunity that I could write for a site, like I was willing to figure out a way, whether that was me writing it or hiring a writer to help me complete the article, just so I can get get that byline.
Gotcha. So I know real estate is not your main thing, but have you done real estate at all? Like have you dabbled in buying properties or anything?
So, my father-in-law back in the day, I'm not sure if he did this on his own. So there's this guy, and you might be familiar with him. I don't know if he's still around. His name was Carlton Sheets.
Oh yeah. I remember him.
And okay, so he had like this infomercial, and you could buy like this 12 CD set, an audio CD to listen to all his secrets about real estate investing.
I think that was actually
my father-in-law.
I think that was like the first thing I ever bought off eBay. It was from like the early 90s. I mean, it was just ancient by today's standards. And I remember his infomercials for sure.
Oh yeah. So my father-in-law bought it, and I don't even know why he bought it, but I remember he let me borrow it. And dude, I mean, I listened to all 12 audio CDs, and like I was all in. So we had this master plan because he was really good at fixing things, building things, and he kind of saw me as the money guy. So like we were going to do this partnership, and we just start looking at properties, and we were looking at HUD properties, like made an offer on that. We unfortunately didn't get it. And I was driving all around Southern Illinois. And this is, I was probably an advisor now for, I guess like 3 or 4 years, probably I think my 4th year of being an advisor. And I'd read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so like, I'm excited about these new exciting ways to build wealth. And I remember somewhere in this process, I remember I went to a St. Louis Cardinals games with one of my best friends at the time. And I was boasting to him about how I was confident by the end of the year that I would have at least 12 real estate investment properties. Yeah. Like that's how confident I was. I'm laughing because I don't own any. I'm like, I don't want to I probably should have more suspenseful buildup, but like, I don't own any. We ended up making this offer on a duplex, and I was really excited, like, oh, it was a good price. I don't know like what a good price is, but I put an offer on it. And I knew that my CPA was also heavily invested into real estate. And so after I made the offer, he was willing to go to lunch with me, and I showed him like the property, showed him all the numbers. And he was just like, what are you doing? Yeah. It's like, you know that I'm a real estate investor. Like, why would you not come talk to me before you make the offer? Because you are overpaying for this property. Like if the AC goes out, like you're in the hole. Like, and I don't remember how much it was. It was like $119,000, I think, was this duplex. And anyway, like it was, so thankfully I was able to get out of the deal. Didn't even lose my earnest money. Felt like a complete fool because I'm having to backtrack, to the realtor and just look like a complete doofus. And I just remember thinking, it's like, okay, I'm spending a lot of time driving around trying to find properties. I obviously don't know what I'm doing. I didn't feel didn't feel confident in pursuing real estate anymore. And I realized, you know what, I've got a really good thing here going with the financial planning practice. I'm wasting so much time driving around when I could actually just spend more of that time reinvesting back into my business. You know, that was already, making me good money. So I kind of just put all the real estate to the side and invested my time back into the business. And then the company I was working for ended up selling out. The brokerage firm sold, which is now Wells Fargo. They got swallowed by Wells Fargo. And that's when we ended up leaving and going independent. And that's when I read the article about blogging. And so I just think about, like, it was definitely, I needed to go through that experience of like, okay, real estate works wonders for a lot of people. Obviously, it's worked very well for yourself and thousands of others. At least for that time in my life, like, it wasn't a good fit. And then I end up discovering another opportunity that helped me grow the financial planning practice and became a side hustle, which ended up becoming my main hustle now to this day.
Yeah.
So the way I look at it is physical real estate didn't do so well. Digital real estate, it worked out very well.
Yeah.
I guess it goes to show, like, if you do want to pursue that kind of thing as an influencer, there's a lot of opportunity there. If you can do that first crucial step of making a good, viable platform.
I mean, it's really, Dan Sullivan, I was in this coaching program called the Strategic Coach, and Dan Sullivan, he would call these strategic byproducts. And I think about in your own, like, real estate adventure, like, you don't know what you know until you put yourself out there, so then you start doing some research, you start making offers, you start connecting with other people, and all of a sudden there are these opportunities that, like, you didn't even know existed that literally fall in your lap just because you're willing to take a risk. Like, you hear a lot of people say, oh, they just got lucky. It's like, no, it's because they took a risk. They put themselves out there. They made that phone call. They made that drive. They knocked on that door. They sent that text message. I got this text. I'm sure you've probably seen these. Like, somebody texted me, hey, I don't want to intrude, but just curious, you might be selling your house. It's one of those.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like, I don't know who you are. I'm a little creeped out the fact that you have my cell phone number. That being said, I'm sure that they probably sent out hundreds or thousands of these, through some database or some CRM. And this person, and I'm sure they're getting a lot of, like, comments, text messages back, like, how did you get my number? But nonetheless, like, they took a risk and they're willing to put themselves out there, and it's doing little things like that. Like, that's when opportunities and luck find you.
Yeah, for sure. Now, your YouTube channel is called Wealth Hacker. So what are some of your favorite hacks that you've used, or maybe some hacks that the average person might not know about? I know you talk about income accelerators and that kind of thing. What are those? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So it's like, I think it kind of ties into, I mean, there's 5 different income accelerators that I typically talk to, but, looking back on my journey, when I think about accelerated learning, and I definitely came from a scarcity broke mindset household. So, like, my dad, I don't think he even owned any investments. My mom, like, she owned some investments, but it was like fixed annuities and like life insurance stuff. Right. So when I think about, like, this through my own journey, when I saw the most growth, it's because I was willing to invest in myself. And it's so cliche. You hear that all the time. Investing in yourself, you get the best ROI. It's like, it's true, but, like, what does that look like exactly? And some of the little ways initially, like accelerated learning. I mean, it's like picking up a book, and reading a lot of business books. And I just started reading, like, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, going back to, like, Crush It, Gary Vaynerchuk, $100 Startup, Chris Guillebeau. Just books like this that I was just very curious. I was curious to understand how people are growing businesses, how people are building wealth, because that was something I was not exposed to. In addition to that, that was also, like, just listening to podcasts and going to conferences, buying online courses, investing into, looking at me getting the CFP designation. Like, I looked at that as, like, oh, I just wanted to, like, look like I was legit, but also too, like, I learned a lot just by going through that process. So that's one way, and an easy way, right? Because like when you talk about investing in yourself, like a lot of people are like, man, I'm broke. I don't have any money. It's like, well, how much does it cost to buy a book? Or if you want to go to the library or buy it used off Amazon. I mean, there's ways that you can learn. Podcasts. Last time I checked, you can download a lot of podcasts and not have to pay anything. So that's one way. Another way, when I think about the largest investments where I've got some of the best return, it wasn't like me buying some stock or a mutual fund. Two examples I like to share. One was, and this was a big deal back then. I think last time you and I had a call, you mentioned like how much you spent on your website design. And there was a time like if you would have told yourself 5 years ago how much you spent on a website design, like you probably would have like puked on yourself.
For sure. Absolutely.
And I remember because my first website, I think I spent like $500 and that's what I had for a couple years. And then I paid somebody to give me some sort of like custom header. And that was like another $500. And that's what I had for the first couple of years. And going to a conference, I ended up sitting next to these guys that were going to the same conference. They were graphic designers, had their own like agency. And I ended up deciding to work with them. And they gave me a quote where they were going to give me a brand new web design. And it was like $8,000. And at that time, like prior to that, I remember in college, I drove a 1996 Pontiac Grand Am, red 4-door with a spoiler.
Yeah, I remember those.
And then after that, I drove my grandmother's 1998 Chevy Lumina that I inherited when she passed away. I
remember those too.
Which I think I ended up selling. Which I ended up selling. And I think I sold both of those for around, I think it was like $6,500, maybe $7,500, right? So in my brain, like kind of like the whole scarcity mindset, broke mindset, I'm like, wait, you want me to pay $8,000, which is $500,000 to $100,000 more than the two cars that I drove. Like it was just really hard for me to. I was really excited though. I really wanted to do it, but I'm like, it just felt like just doesn't feel right. And I remember my wife, praise her for like actually giving me the go ahead. So I had wrote a book called Soldier of Finance, and it was getting ready to come out like in the next few months. So the thought was like, man, if I have like a book that's getting ready to publish, I want a website that looks like I'm legit, you know? So we pulled the trigger and I ended up spending $8,000 on this website design. And one of the coolest things happened, like within 90 days of spending that money, because of the affiliate promotion, all the ads that we had on the site, I made all that money back, like within, I think it was less than 90 days.
Wow, that's awesome.
I mean, it was like the quickest return on investment I think I'd ever seen on anything for that matter. And I'm like, I was just blown away.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'd like to share another one because I think it's something that it's hard for a lot of people to understand especially when you start thinking about investing in yourself. And that is hiring, whether it be a coach, a consultant, a mentor, maybe paying for a mastermind group. Because sometimes like when for me, at least with a website design, at least I can kind of see what it is. Like I can't hold it. I can't put it in my pocket, but at least I can like go online and see what I got. Yeah. But when it comes to like coaching or consulting, like it's hard because you're not getting anything tangible. Like you're not going to the mailbox and waiting for that package to arrive. So another major investment, this would have been like about probably a year after all this, was hiring or paying for a coaching program. I briefly mentioned I was in strategic coach for 5 years, but the very first time, whenever I was introduced to it, it was like, I think it was about the same price. It was like $8,000 to do this coaching program. And prior to that, like, I'm like, I'd never even thought about hiring a coach. Like, I just knew that I was at a stage in my business where I just felt stuck and I just felt like I needed something. I just didn't know what it was. And I knew that the guy had hired me at my former financial planner. The guy hired me as a junior broker back in the day. He told me once that he'd hired a business coach. And I remember when I heard that in my first like year or two of being a financial planner, like it didn't make sense to me. Like, you hire a business coach, like to do what?
Yeah.
Like I get like hiring a basketball coach or like a fitness coach, but like a business coach. So when I talked to him, I ended up calling him like, hey man, you told me you hired a business coach. Can you just tell me like, what were you thinking? What was the angle behind it? And he's like, man, it helped me think about my thinking, getting more clear on what I wanted to accomplish. And it just really helps. So like I heard that, I'm like, okay, I'm in, I'm going to do it. So I paid this $8,000. I did it for a year. And this was me going to 4 sessions for the entire year. So I go up to Chicago one day every quarter. In addition to that, I got to talk to a program advisor once a quarter. And like, that's what I got for like $8,000. Wow. And what I love sharing about the stories because, so I did it for a year and I'll ask you, how much do you think my income increased after doing that for a year?
Oh man. I don't know. 10%. Let's go with that.
It didn't go up at all. I was completely flat.
Okay. That was my second guess.
So now, so if I was flat, technically I lost money because I spent $8,000 and I didn't make any more money than I had the year before. Mm-hmm. So what had happened during this entire year was they were introducing me to different ways to approach business, different ways to approach life, and really rewiring like just my mindset on all these different things. And I'm kind of stubborn when it comes to change. Mm-hmm. So I fought a lot of them. I incorporated some, but I fought a lot of it. So that first year really was just like rewiring how I was thinking, how I approached things. Fast forward. So I signed up for another year because somebody told me like that had done this program before, like if you're going to do it for at least 3 years, mm-hmm. like do it for 3, don't just do it for a year. So I signed up again for the second year, another $8,000, signed up again for the third year, $8,000. So now I've got $24,000 into it, not including hotels, travel, and everything else. Right. So when I started, I was making about $250,000 a year. After year one, still making $250,000. By the end of the third year, I won't ask you, I'll just go ahead and tell you. By the end of the third year, my revenue had almost tripled.
Wow, man. Crazy.
I think it was like $730,000 by the end of that third year.
And what happened exactly? Like, why did that's a big jump in 1 year.
It was a huge jump. And what ended up happening was like, I understood delegating, outsourcing. I mean, at least I thought I did, right? So all I can tell you is that what I learned a lot was understanding what my unique ability was. And your unique ability is defined as what is your God-given talent that you flourish in, that gives you energy that you could do all day, every day. But most importantly, you get paid a lot of money to do it. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the key principles of this program, was identifying what is your unique ability and then fighting like hell to stay in that realm as often as you can. Mm-hmm. So that meant I had to start removing a lot of different tasks, a lot of responsibilities, a lot of things that I felt like, because this is really funny. Prior to that, I was the one that was scheduling appointments with my clients. I don't know why I was doing it. That's what I started with. And so like I'm finally realizing, man, like when you call a doctor office, like in schedule an appointment, like you're not talking to the doctor, you're talking to the receptionist, you know? So I hadn't even hired, during that process, I finally hired an office manager. I started hiring key people for the site. That's when I brought on a business partner that understood SEO more than I did, and really let go of a lot of things that I felt that I needed to have control in. Mm-hmm. That was hard.
Oh, I'm sure.
But then that freed up so much time that I could focus my creative energy on the things that I cared about.
Yeah.
How did you? That was.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, how did you, in the order of priority, figure out which things to start outsourcing first? Was it based on the things that you hated doing the most, or was it based on I don't know, some other rationale behind that?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways. Like one of the ways they challenged you was, write down everything that you do throughout your day. Mm-hmm. like make a list, inventory, you know, like just write down, like you do something, like just have a little piece of paper on your desk and just jot it down real quick. And then look at all these things that you're doing and then ask yourself, like, is this what the CEO should be doing? Mm-hmm. Like if you're the CEO of a company, if you want to use like would Elon Musk be doing this? Would Jeff Bezos be doing this? Mm-hmm. So that was one way. Another way is if you find yourself in the middle of doing something and you hate life, if you want to kick your dog, yell at your spouse, then there's a good chance that this is not your unique ability. And this is where you start working towards hiring somebody, outsourcing, delegating, or just removing it from is this something that you even need to do anymore? Like, is it something you've just been doing all along just because it's just like you thought you needed to do? So you just start asking and having to answer a lot of tough questions like that. Yeah. Another big piece, which I kind of I forget until I get really excited about this, but we took, there's this personality test, and there's several out there. The one that they were really big on is the Kolbe index.
Yeah, taking that one.
Kolbe. Mm-hmm. And I believe that the lady that created it, I believe that her grandfather or a relative is the one that created the IQ test. Just kind of give an example. So a little fun fact for you. Yeah. So the Kolbe basically is a personality test. You get 4 numbers, and all it shares with you is like, you might already know this, but like it just basically shows like this is how you are wired. Mm-hmm. Like this is just who you are. And I'm probably going to forget all 4 quadrants, but it's either quick start, research, systems builder, and also follow through, meaning that you get stuff done. Mm-hmm. So when I took this personality test, the Kolbe index, it basically just validated I love new ideas. So I'm a high quick start. I get a bunch of I suffer from shiny object syndrome. Ooh, new idea. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. I also am a high researcher. So I just want to know, and this has actually paid off well as a financial planner, because when a client would come in or a prospect would come in, like I would want to know everything about their situation. I want to know everything about their investments. And if I was proposing anything, I wanted to make sure that I could answer every single question that they had. So high fact finder, high researcher. What I was low in is follow through. So I'm the guy that gets a lot of ideas, but when it actually starts to implement these ideas, when it actually turns into work, I'm like, oh crap, this sucks. and that doesn't mean that I can't push through and get it done, because I do. But there are definitely those times where there had a lot of projects where I'd get 60% done, 70% done, and then I would go and start something else. And I might come back and finish it, or it would just sit there and not get finished. So when I started hiring people, this is one of the things you could do with HR to avoid HR conflicts, is you could take the personality test. And then, so my first office manager I hired, they were high follow through, high on building systems, low quick starts, research that was probably good. But so basically what I'm sharing is I learned how I was wired, and I could see it for what it was. So that meant, because one of the things I would get into trouble with being a high quick start is Seth gives me a call and has this great business idea and opportunity. I really like Seth. This sounds great. Yes, I'm going to do it. I am in. Without asking a lot of qualifying questions, like, how much time is this going to take? What do you need from me? How much money will this take? Is there any other question? Just stuff like that, right? I would just get so excited that I would often say yes to a lot of things and then realize, oh, crap. I overcommitted myself. So I had to go back and backtrack and just say, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said yes. So I've just learned through all this, when a great, amazing opportunity comes up, I'm like, man, thank you for bringing this to me. Sounds awesome. Let me think about it and I'll get back to you. And let me think about it. And that is me just reminding myself, what am I working on right now? What are my current goals? What are my current obligations? A lot of time in prayer, just like, all right, God, show me, does this make sense for me right now? Just basically just to hit pause, tap on the brakes just a little bit before I get myself into situations. And it still happens. Like there's still times I find myself like, but compared to how it used to be, oh man, it was impossible for me to say no.
Yeah.
Like no that was death.
Yeah.
So like that, these are just some of the things that I've learned by investing in myself. So one of the ways when you understand how you're wired and how you operate, I mean, it's just a way that you talk about accelerating your income, because you're not finding yourself in a situation you shouldn't be in, and you're putting yourself in situations that are going to set yourself best for success.
Yeah. Yeah. That Kolbe is, it's very insightful. It's probably worth everybody taking that at some point just to know themselves a little bit better. But I know a cool thing that they have if you're an employer is you can set up a profile for the person you're hiring. Like, I know that this person will need to be good at this. So you sort of create the picture perfect image of like, if they could be perfect, they would look like this, and then have them take it. And it'll actually give them like a letter grade based on how close they came. Like they scored an A or a B or a C, or they failed. Like, do not hire them for this if that's really what you need. And I don't know, I just thought that was a creative way to use it kind of, I don't know, backwards, or however you want to say that, for somebody else that you're hiring. There's also
that
good.
A lot of one helped out so much.
Yeah.
Everybody I hired, they always did the Kolbe. Even though we'll save this for another day. Even though I've had some bad partnerships, but initially, like I had them take the Kolbe just so that I could understand how they were wired. So when they came to me with this amazing idea, I'm like, ooh, wait, I'm talking to myself right now.
Yeah.
So this sounds really good. But recognizing that they're a high quick start like myself, they can get easily excited. So helping me kind of reset my expectations on certain things. So it's just helped so much.
Yeah. Do you know who Perry Marshall is?
80-20?
Yes. Yep. 80-20 sales and marketing.
Yeah.
So we had him on the podcast a couple years ago, and he's got a similar thing to the Kolbe test, but it's called the marketing DNA test, where it's a very similar process. Even like the output looks pretty similar, but it's focused on marketing. Like, who are you as a marketer? Like, are you the kind of person who can just get up in front of a stage and wing it and it's going to come out great? Or are you the kind of person who you need to like prepare and really think it through and, just practice again and again and then get up on stage? And because you practice so much, it's going to be even better than a person who's good at winging it. Just kind of understanding like, where do you excel in different ways? But that's another good one. That's at least from the marketing angle. It's good to understand who you are. So as somebody who talks a lot about personal finance and investing and that kind of thing, I saw an interesting video on your channel. I think it was something about how to invest $500. And it got me thinking about this. It was a few years ago, but it got me thinking about this idea of starting with a small amount of money. Say if you just literally don't have much money. Say you're a broke college kid or something like that. Or maybe if it was 1,000 or even 5,000. And I'm wondering, if you had to start over today, if everything was taken away from you and you had very little money, like what would you do to recreate what you've got today?
That's a great question. I think that would be a few different things, but I think all kind of the same umbrella. Cause like obviously investing, for me, like buying stocks, even buying crypto. I mean, yes, you can make money. It's just going to take a little bit of time, unless you just go super risky, which I wouldn't ever suggest. So to me, it's like, what can I build? What sort of asset can I build? Obviously, real estate could be another thing to explore, something I'm just not comfortable. So in my own experience, it would be creating some sort of online brand. So basically another website, authority website, picking a niche that I just felt passionate about, that I could speak with confidence. And then, because a question I get sometimes is, would you do a blog or do a YouTube channel? Like if you were to start fresh. And if I was comfortable with video, I would choose YouTube first. I would want to have my own site so that you can drive people back from, because the YouTube algorithm can be great at times and it can be gnarly at times. But the one thing that I've learned, just kind of one of these funny things, right? Because I've been blogging for like almost 10 years, certified financial planner, been featured in all these big media sites. And then when I started taking YouTube seriously, I started getting comments from people that were discovering me for the first time. And the fact that I could put myself on video and talk like I knew what I was talking about, like that was gave more authority than me being a CFP and being featured on Investopedia and CNBC and Forbes, right? All because I recorded a YouTube video.
Yeah.
So it will definitely give you a lot of authority, which is like, it's still funny to me, but there's just something about somebody that can actually put themselves in front of a camera and speak about a topic that they sound like they know what the heck they're talking about. So that's what I would do if I had a little bit of money. You know, like you don't have to buy a fancy camera, right? Like if you've got a newer iPhone, like the video quality is good. I mean, you can watch like Mr. Beast, like some of his original video, not like when he was like a teenager, but even like when he was bigger. Like I was thinking he was using some of these expensive DSLR cameras. Like I've got this $4,000 camera over here, like this Canon EO. I don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
And I remember like seeing the cameras that he was using, and I'm like, wait, that's like a little like Canon like $400 point and shoot camera. Like that's what you're using for these videos that are getting like millions of views.
Yeah.
Because as long as it's good video quality and decent audio, but you have a good message, a message that either encourages people, that shows somebody how to do something, how to accelerate their learning, how to get past an obstacle, whatever that may be, like that, when you start helping people break through their own personal barriers, like that's when you start to see results and build trust and build authority.
Yeah, it's your answer doesn't surprise me. And I think mine would be similar in that, I mean, really what I would do if I was in that situation, if everything was taken away and I had to build it all back, I mean, the way that I would do it is with what's in my head. It's not so much like the resources I have right at my fingertips. It's more just understanding, oh yeah, okay, I've learned how to build this kind of business. Let's start over again and do a similar thing. And maybe the times have changed since back when I first started it, but I could relearn that kind of thing. But just having that kind of education and experience, it's cool how like the assets in your brain are assets that people can't really take away from you. And that's kind of going back to your earlier point about like, how much does it really cost to get a book and educate yourself? You know, like go out there and knock on a door, take the risk, do the thing that's hard to do. Because like you will learn something through every little experience you have, even if it's miserable, even if you don't win in that situation, like you're still building your own mental library of how the world works and how to get ahead. So at the end of most of our interviews that we do, if we have time, I like to ask 3 final questions just to learn a little bit more about our guest that it's kind of different than the earlier stuff we talked about. But the first question is, what is your biggest fear?
Wow.
These are kind of big, hard-hitting questions, by the way. So if you need a minute to think about it.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, having 4 kids and my oldest being 15 now, I think one of the biggest fears I have is, you know, did I invest enough time with them while they were underneath, you know, our roof, like in their house? Like, did I do a good enough job letting them know about what they need to know to be successful human beings? So that's something that I think about a lot. I pray about a lot. And I guess one of the ways I just kind of get myself, because like I look back and there was just a time in my life where I came from like a divorced parents, and I can look back and I don't think that I knew what unconditional love was. So initially when I had my kids were younger, this is my oldest son, man, I feel so bad for him because I was the dad that a lot of passive aggressive, you know, like I was the one that I used to yell at sporting events when they didn't do something right. Like I was just that dad, you know, and it wasn't until he got probably, I think in 7th or 8th grade where I finally kind of had that reveal of, oh crap, I don't want to be that kind of dad. Actually, when I became an assistant coach on one of his baseball teams and I could hear the other parents yelling at their kids, I'm thinking like, when you're yelling at your kid because he didn't catch a fly ball, like I promise you, your kid was doing the best that he could. Like that child did not drop that ball on purpose to piss you off. But like, gosh, I was that dad, man. And so I'm thankful that I can see how I was. My middle son, he's 12, like he's my basketball player. And we were talking about, he's got a new coach. And I asked him like, oh, who is your meanest coach? He's like, you were.
Oh.
And I'm like, are you? Oh yeah, you're right. Okay. So there was that one year that I was not a happy coach. I was coaching both my boys, and that's the most I've ever yelled in my life, and complete transformation. So anyway, that is my biggest fear of not investing enough into them to give them the tools they need to succeed in their own lives.
Yeah, fear, it's kind of a funny thing. It's a lot of people say like, fear is a liar, like don't live your life under fear and this kind of thing. But all right, fear is kind of like cynicism or skepticism or other negative energy kind of thoughts where like it is useful to a point if it gets you to like change your behavior or reform your ways or improve yourself in some way. And it sounds like, it sounds like you have this reflective quality where you can look at yourself and be like, I want to make the most of this time. So I'm going to do what I have to do to make that true. Whereas there's other fears that are just like totally counterproductive, like fearing just irrational stuff that's never going to happen. And it just like brings anxiety into your life. But anyway, I think I need to work on that in my life. I have a lot of irrational fears. So what are you most proud of?
I am most proud in the self-discovery of the things that I didn't do a very good job at as being a parent, like the yelling and really giving my kids a space to share their feelings in a way that felt safe. That's something that I really struggled with years ago. And now like, I'm just really proud that my oldest son, he had some anxiety, some social trigger type stuff, dealing with some hardships at school, and he came to both his mom and I and shared like how he was feeling, and it was some feelings that, man, like with the anxiety and depression, like it scared us, like it really scared us. And at the end of it, when we had a chance to kind of like share it with other people, kind of download it, we realized like, wow, what a gift that he felt safe enough to come to mom and dad and share how he was feeling. And because everybody we shared the story with, we would hear how awesome that he was able to tell you that, because when I was a kid, I felt the exact same way, but I never could tell that to my mom and dad. So seeing it my oldest son, seeing it my daughter, I just love when my daughter says like, I'm feeling really sad because you da 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 da. And it's just like speaking, like, so my wife and I, we do couples counseling. I've had a lot of personal therapy just through some stuff I had to work through, some like trauma as a kid. So we have a lot of like therapy words like in the house. So when my kids can clearly articulate how they're feeling, like it's refreshing, as opposed to like the passive aggressive type comments that I was guilty of. Yeah. And now, like, if that type of comment comes out from like my mouth, like my kids pick up on it pretty quick. And my oldest will I remember one time, like I was upset because he didn't take out the trash or something like that. And I'm like, dude, you didn't take out the trash. He's like, you didn't ask me. It's like, it's true, I didn't. Yeah. It was overflowing though, like, and you could have saw it, but no, you're right. I had an expectation that you would. So it was like just having like that healthy conversation. Like he called me out. He's like, I'll do it. You didn't ask me. Like, crap, you're right, I didn't. Yeah. So I'm proud of how far I've came and how my kids could be very open.
It sounds like therapy or counseling or whatever you went through. I mean, has that been pretty helpful to you in life? Just being able to like identify, I don't know,
flaws in your head or in your thinking and just how to restructure and reframe things? Or
Oh my gosh, yeah, I fought it for a long time. So I was in the army, as I mentioned, I was in the military. I was deployed to Iraq back in '05, and they really suggested, like, if you think you need help, like, go to therapy, get help. And for many of us, many soldiers, like, nah, we're just too proud, too manly, to need help. But my wife and I, like, that first 3 months of me being home, man, we were not doing good at all. Like, so I didn't know if we were going to make it. We ended up going to couples counseling. I think I did some individual therapy just to process some of the trauma. And turns out it wasn't just from being deployed. It was like stuff from my childhood, that I just learning about myself, learning about my wife's history, her childhood, some stuff she had to deal with. And then going forward, and I've been able, just because when I started to recognize, and my wife recognized, like, man, there's just some unhealthy behaviors, some unhealthy, just the way that I was approaching things. Like, like when my kid didn't pick up his room, like, it would, like, I had like rage, like I'd get angry, and I'd get angry really quick. And when luckily I had people that could speak truth into my life, and just hearing, like, okay, yeah, I guess you're right. Like, that's not really worth getting angry over that. So just doing, willing to be vulnerable, to invest the time, the money into doing individual therapy, also doing couples counseling, I was able to recognize, like, man, like, there was just some stuff from my childhood that I had never addressed because I didn't know how to. Like, as I mentioned, like, my parents divorced when I was young, and just that alone is traumatic. So I learned that, trauma is trauma. Everybody has their own trauma. Everybody has their own experiences, and allowing yourself to recognize, like, yeah, that was hard. Having to fly. My parents split up. I was in California. My dad moved back to the Midwest Illinois, and like, I was 3 or 4 years old, flying on an airplane from LA to Illinois, like, by myself.
Man, that's crazy.
And like, I think about, like, like, I have like a 7-year-old, like, I wouldn't even let her do that right now. Right. Like, I was like 3 or 4 years old, and there were, like, I don't remember a lot of things from my childhood, but like, I remember that. And I remember being scared out of my, what.
Yeah, no kidding.
And there was just like a lot of that stuff that, it's funny because, like, as a kid, like, you don't know how to process that. Right.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there, like, talking to a flight attendant, but I didn't cry. Like, there was no point to cry. Like, there was no one there to console me.
Yeah.
So, like, doing all this, like, work is like recognizing, man, like, there was a lot of fear, a lot of sadness and grief that I never gave myself permission to process. So doing all this work has just freed up a lot that I was holding on to.
Yeah.
It's been hard. It's been really hard, but 100% worth it, because now my kids get to experience, like, a healthier version of me, which, you talk about generational wealth, is the stuff that I get to give them now, that my wife get to give them, that we didn't get from our parents. Now they get to give that to their kids and people in their life. And like, that's the stuff that I get goosebumps on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because those kind of issues, I think, can kind of like affect generation after generation if they're not like identified and addressed. I mean, sometimes it might be like, I don't know, alcohol addiction. Other times it might just be like toxic behavior or just like, abuse or something like that. I mean, you name it. But when you think of how many generations that kind of thing can go on, a friend of mine, he used to be like a really bad alcoholic, like not just drinking too much, but like all the negative behaviors you can imagine going with it. And he was able to kick it. And he's been sober for a number of years now. But I was like, man, just think of how your kids' lives are going to be different. Like their kids' lives are probably going to be different. And then their kids, like think of the hundreds of people into the future whose lives will be different because you did the hard work
of fixing that issue that was just going to go generation to generation to generation, and you stopped it. Like, that's a huge accomplishment. So anyway,
I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Last question. So let's pretend for a moment that you just got $100 million wired to your bank account and you're not allowed to stay on your current career path. So you can't do blogging, YouTubing, podcasting, financial planning. You're not allowed to do any of that. What do you want to do for the rest of your life?
I'd probably do something in, I don't know if it'd be like counseling or therapy or helping couples or helping families. Our daughter, our youngest daughter, she's actually adopted. So like helping people through that adoption process, coaching them and helping them, like something like that. Right. Mm-hmm. I've learned a lot just through my own therapy. And I didn't mention my youngest son. He's had some behavioral stuff that he's gone through a lot of therapy, and we learned a lot through his whole process as well. And what my wife and I have learned through all of this is that when we've shared a lot of this with other parents, I mean, a lot of parents are just clueless on all this stuff, and just because we didn't,
I can see that.
You don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's like, I feel like if somebody wired me $100 million, like I'm doing everything I can to educate parents, families on what they need to be successful, just to have that nurturing, unconditional love just pouring out of their house. Mm-hmm. Like that's where I would go towards.
Yeah. Awesome. Sounds good, man. So if people want to find out more about you, follow you online, check out your website, any of that, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah. Good Financial Sense. That is the blog, the YouTube channel, Wealth Hacker, which you mentioned. I'm also mostly active on Twitter and Instagram, mostly Twitter actually, but at JJeffRose, 2 J's. You can hit me up there. So you can check me out on all those fun places.
All right. Yeah, and I will link to all that stuff in the show notes, which you can find at retipster.com/147, because this is episode 147. And Jeff, thanks again for chatting with me. It's been awesome to get to know you a little bit better. And hopefully we'll talk again soon.